Hello there, and welcome back to Sleep Through History, your peaceful companion as you journey into the quiet corridors of the past. Tonight, as the world outside settles into its nightly hush, we embark on another fascinating exploration, delving into the lives of 10 remarkable individuals whose influence quietly echoed through the Viking Age, shaping the world in profound ways. If you find solace and curiosity in these forgotten tales, and if our journeys help guide you to a restful night, we would be genuinely grateful if you could gently like this video. It truly helps our quiet community grow. And for more journeys into history's calming depths, consider subscribing and ringing that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We also love hearing from you. Please share in the comments below what historical topic or mystery you'd like to explore next. Now, as your mind begins to unwind, prepare to meet a figure whose mind was sharper than any blade, a strategic genius whose quiet cunning would fundamentally reshape Anglo-Saxon England. We begin with Ivar the Boneless. Number 1. Ivar the Boneless, Ivar hin by Norse, the master strategist who reshaped England *. Our journey into the quiet shadows of Viking influence begins not with a brute force, but with a mind sharper than any blade. Ivar the Boneless, his name, shrouded in legend and whispered in sagas, evokes an image of a formidable, almost spectral figure. But beneath the dramatic epithet lies the story of a strategic genius whose quiet, cunning, and relentless ambition would fundamentally reshape the political landscape of Anglo-Saxon England, leaving an enduring legacy that resonated for centuries. The exact nature of Ivar's bonelessness remains a topic of quiet contemplation for historians. Some sagas suggest he suffered from a condition that rendered his bones weak, or that he was exceptionally flexible, perhaps carried into battle on a shield. Yet, it's crucial to understand that in the Viking world, where physical prowess was often paramount, Ivar's true power lay not in his muscles, but in his intellect. He was not a berserker, blindly charging into the fray. He was a chess master, calculating every move, anticipating every counter, and orchestrating campaigns with a chilling precision that made him perhaps the most dangerous Viking leader of his age. Imagine the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of the 9th century. Independent, often squabbling realms, vulnerable to the sudden, devastating raids that characterized the early Viking incursions. These raids were typically hit-and-run affairs, swift attacks for plunder, followed by a quick retreat. But Ivar, along with his brothers and allies, had a far grander, more audacious vision. They were not interested in mere loot. They sought land, dominion, and permanent settlement. Their arrival in East Anglia in 865 AD marked a seismic shift in the nature of Viking activity. This was not a raiding party. This was the Great Heathen Army. The sheer scale of this army, by contemporary standards, was unprecedented. It was a massive force, perhaps numbering in the thousands, drawn from various Norse and Danish territories, all united under a common, destructive purpose. And at its heart, guiding its movements, was Ivar. His leadership was not just about commanding warriors, it was about logistics, strategy, and understanding the political weaknesses of his enemies. He exploited the divisions among the Anglo-Saxon kings, preventing them from forming a united front. He understood the terrain, the seasons, and the psychology of warfare. One of Ivar's most chillingly effective strategies was the use of winter encampments. Unlike earlier raiders who typically returned home for the colder months, the Great Heathen Army would settle down, often in fortified positions, and then launch campaigns in the spring. This allowed them to consolidate their gains, gather intelligence, and maintain constant pressure on the Anglo-Saxons. It was a sign of a truly professional and long-term military operation, meticulously planned and executed. These encampments were not merely temporary shelters. They were strategic hubs, often built from existing Roman ruins or quickly constructed earthworks, creating a network of secure bases from which to launch their next offensive. Their ability to remain in enemy territory year-round was a game-changer, transforming the nature of warfare in England from sporadic raids to sustained conquest. Consider the Kingdom of East Anglia. In 869 AD, the Great Heathen Army, under Ivar's guidance, marched upon it. King Edmund, a devout Christian, refused to renounce his faith or become a vassal. What followed was a brutal testament to Ivar's ruthlessness and strategic objectives. Edmund was defeated, captured, and martyred. The manner of his death, described in later accounts as being tied to a tree and shot with arrows until he resembled a hedgehog, solidified his status as a saint and further enshrined Ivar's image as a fearsome, almost pagan, antagonist. But beyond the horrific imagery, Edmund's death was a clear signal. The Vikings were here to stay, and they would not tolerate resistance to their dominion. The systematic dismantling of the East Anglian royal house and the installation of puppet rulers demonstrated a clear intent to establish permanent control, not just extract tribute. From East Anglia, Ivar's gaze turned north to Northumbria. The region was embroiled in a civil war between two rival claimants to the throne. Ivar, with his characteristic strategic foresight, saw an opportunity. He did not immediately take sides. Instead, he allowed the internal conflict to weaken both factions, and then, with devastating precision, he struck at York. The city fell, and Northumbria was brought under Viking control. This wasn't merely a raid, it was a conquest, aimed at dismantling existing power structures and establishing a permanent Norse presence. His campaigns were marked by a terrifying efficiency, striking at the heart of Anglo-Saxon power and systematically weakening their ability to resist. The capture of key strongholds like York was not just a military victory, it was a psychological blow that shattered the illusion of Anglo-Saxon invincibility. Perhaps the most famous, and certainly the most chilling, tale associated with Ivar is his role in the execution of Gla, King of Northumbria. Legend holds that Gla had previously captured and executed Ivar's father, Ragnar Lothbrok, by throwing him into a pit of snakes. The Blood Eagle, a horrific ritualistic execution where the victim's ribs were severed from the spine and their lungs pulled out to resemble eagle wings, is said to have been Ivar's brutal revenge. While the historicity of the Blood Eagle itself is debated by scholars, the story underscores the terrifying reputation Ivar cultivated, a man driven by vengeance, but also by a cold, calculating will to dominate. This reputation alone was a powerful weapon, often causing fear and disarray among his enemies even before battle was joined. Ivar's influence extended beyond military conquest. He played a significant role in the initial establishment of the Danois, the vast region of England that eventually came under Viking control and adopted Danish laws and customs, while others like Halfdan Ragnarsson would be instrumental in the actual settlement. Ivar's campaigns created the conditions for this profound cultural and political shift. He dismantled Anglo-Saxon governance, creating a vacuum that was then filled by Norse systems, leading to a unique hybrid culture that defined much of England for centuries. The linguistic legacy alone is immense. Countless English words, from sky to anger, are derived from Old Norse, a quiet testament to the enduring presence Ivar helped establish. Even place names across modern England, like those ending in by farm or village or Thorpe Hamlet, silently echo the permanent Norse footprint he helped forge. His activities were not confined to England. After leaving England, Ivar is believed to have turned his attention to Ireland. The Annals of Ulster record that in 872-871 AD, Ivar, in alliance with Elafar the White, another prominent Viking leader, besieged and captured Dumbarton, the capital of the Kingdom of Strathclyde in Scotland. This was a long and arduous siege, lasting for months, a testament to Ivar's enduring strategic patience and military acumen. The spoils from Dumbarton were immense, and the victory further solidified his reputation as an unstoppable force across the British Isles. The sheer scale and duration of these campaigns demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of logistics and resource management. Far beyond simple raiding, Ivar consistently pushed the boundaries of what Viking forces were capable of, transforming their sporadic attacks into a coherent, formidable military presence that reshaped the geopolitical map of the entire region. The details of Ivar's death are as shrouded in mystery as his early life. Some accounts suggest he died peacefully in Ireland in 873 AD, a rare fate for a Viking warlord. This, if true, would be another testament to his strategic prowess, surviving the brutal conflicts he instigated to die in his bed, having achieved immense power and wealth. His influence, however, resonated for generations. The seeds of change he sowed in Anglo-Saxon England eventually led to the unification of England under a single monarch, as the various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, battered and transformed by Viking incursions, eventually coalesced into a more unified entity to resist further invasions. Ivar's legacy is therefore paradoxical. a force of destruction who inadvertently laid the groundwork for a more centralized English state. His quiet intelligence, his ruthless efficiency, and his ability to see the larger strategic picture set him apart from many of his contemporaries. His life was a testament to how a keen mind, even when coupled with physical limitations, could wield more influence than any army. As we reflect on his story, imagine the quiet, calculated steps that led to such monumental shifts in history, and let the echoes of his strategic brilliance guide you into a peaceful, contemplative sleep. Number 2. Canute the Great, the Emperor of the North. See, Canute's journey to greatness began not in the traditional Viking raids of plunder, but in a far more calculated and relentless pursuit of dominion. He was the son of Sweyn Forkbeard, a formidable Danish king who had himself launched a series of devastating, yet ultimately inconclusive, invasions of England. In 1013, Sweyn finally managed to conquer England, only to die weeks later, leaving his fledgling English kingdom to his son Canute. This inheritance, however, was not easily secured. The English nobility, having endured years of Danish incursions, quickly recalled their exiled Anglo-Saxon king Tethelard the Unready, and Canute was forced to retreat. This early setback, however, only sharpened Canute's resolve and refined his strategic vision. He learned from his father's less stable conquest, understanding that brute force alone would not create a lasting realm. The experience of English resistance impressed upon him the need for a deeper integration, a more subtle approach to dominion that recognized the existing structures he sought to control. Imagine the young Canute, defeated but not broken, gathering his forces in Denmark, meticulously planning his return. His second invasion of England, launched in 1015, was not a haphazard affair. It was a well-organized, disciplined military expedition, reflecting a new level of sophistication in Viking warfare. Canute landed with a massive fleet, estimated to be hundreds of longships, carrying thousands of seasoned warriors. He understood the need for a sustained campaign, not just quick strikes. He bypassed fortified towns and systematically ravaged the countryside, cutting off supplies and breaking the will of the local populace. A grim but effective strategy to force submission. His forces were not merely a collection of opportunistic warriors, they were a well-drilled army, capable of coordinated movements and siege warfare, indicating a military organization far beyond what most Viking groups had previously displayed. The ensuing conflict was a brutal and protracted struggle for the soul of England. Canute faced the determined resistance of Ethelred's son, Edmund Ironside, a king who, despite his father's reputation, proved to be a formidable military leader. The two men clashed repeatedly across England, their armies locked in a deadly dance of maneuver and pitched battle. This was no longer just Viking versus Anglo-Saxon. It was a clash of two determined wills, each vying for the destiny of a nation. The relentless campaigning culminated in the Battle of Issanden in 1016, a decisive Viking victory that effectively sealed Canute's conquest. This particular battle, remembered in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, was fiercely fought, showcasing Edmund's bravery against Canute's overwhelming forces and strategic acumen. The English lost many of their leading men, effectively crippling their ability to resist further. Yet, even after the battle, Canute showed a remarkable pragmatism. Instead of simply slaughtering his defeated foe, he agreed to a treaty with Edmund Ironside, dividing England between them. This act of negotiation, rather than total annihilation, was a hallmark of Canute's later reign. It demonstrated a strategic foresight that went beyond mere conquest, hinting at a desire for stable governance. The treaty, likely negotiated on an island in the River Severn or Thames, was a shrewd move, preventing further bloodshed and allowing Canute to consolidate his existing gains without draining his resources. When Edmund died shortly after, potentially from wounds sustained in battle or an illness, Canute was able to quietly consolidate his rule over the entirety of England. Crowned king in London on Christmas Day, 1016. This was a pivotal moment. A Viking warlord was now the undisputed king of England, not just a temporary occupier. His coronation in the traditional heart of English kingship was a powerful symbol of his legitimate claim to the throne, not merely by force, but by succession and acceptance. With England secured, Canute embarked on the truly remarkable phase of his influence, the creation and governance of the North Sea Empire. His ambition stretched beyond conquest. He sought to unite his various realms into a cohesive political entity. In 1018, Upon the death of his brother Harold II, Canute inherited the throne of Denmark, effectively uniting England and Denmark under his personal rule. He quickly dispatched a Danish invasion fleet, which he had largely retained from his conquest of England, back to Denmark, perhaps to help secure his claim and project his power. Later, through a combination of diplomacy, military pressure, and strategic alliances, he also gained control of Norway in 1028, displacing King Olaf II. For a fleeting period, the vast maritime region of the North Sea, from the fjords of Norway to the green fields of England, owed allegiance to one man. His empire became a formidable trading bloc, controlling vital sea lanes and benefiting from the flow of goods and wealth across its diverse territories. This empire was not merely a collection of conquered territories. Canute sought to rule it with a degree of stability and justice that was revolutionary for a Viking king. He understood that lasting power came from the loyalty of his subjects, not just their fear. In England, he wisely retained many existing Anglo-Saxon laws and institutions, blending them with Danish practices. He issued new laws, reformed the coinage, and ensured a relatively stable economy. His laws were designed to be even-handed, protecting both Danes and English, fostering a sense of shared citizenship under his rule. He recognized the value of the Anglo-Saxon administrative machine, particularly its sophisticated system of shires and hundreds, and used it to his advantage. He appointed both Anglo-Saxons and Danes to positions of power, fostering a sense of shared governance rather than outright oppression, often promoting Anglo-Saxon bishops and magnates who had sworn fealty to him. His reign in England is often remembered as a period of surprising peace and prosperity, a stark contrast to the tumultuous decades that preceded it. The flow of silver from England, with its highly efficient mints and tax collection, provided the financial backbone for his wider North Sea ambitions. Canute also recognized the immense power of the Church. Unlike earlier pagan Viking leaders, Canute embraced Christianity wholeheartedly, not just as a matter of personal faith, but as a strategic tool for legitimizing his rule and integrating his disparate realms into the wider European Christian Commonwealth. His famous pilgrimage to Rome in 1027 was a masterstroke of diplomacy and public relations. There, he attended the coronation of Emperor Conrad II and secured favorable terms for English merchants and pilgrims, demonstrating his standing as a legitimate European monarch, not merely a barbarian warlord. He met with Pope John XIX, securing agreements regarding the reduction of fees paid by English archbishops for their palliums and a lessening of tolls faced by English travelers to Rome. This journey quietly cemented his place among the Christian rulers of Europe, giving his empire a veneer of divine sanction and international respect that no Viking ruler before him had achieved. It was a clear signal to both his Christian subjects and the wider European powers that he was a king to be reckoned with, operating within the established order, not outside it. His personal letters from Rome, preserved in historical records, reveal a king deeply concerned with the welfare of his subjects, promising to redress grievances and ensure justice. These were not the words of a ruthless raider, but of a ruler striving for a unified, well-governed realm. He built churches, patronized monasteries, and introduced new ecclesiastic appointments, further integrating England into the larger Christian world and fostering cultural exchange. He even composed a poem about his journey, expressing a wish to reform his life and rule justly, showcasing a side of leadership rarely associated with the raw power of the Viking Age. The legacy of Canute the Great, though his North Sea empire dissolved shortly after his death in 1035, was profound. His unified kingship of England laid crucial groundwork for the future development of the English monarchy. His efforts at legal reform and administrative integration contributed to the sophisticated governance that would characterize later English rule. He demonstrated that Viking power could be channeled not just into destruction, but into creation, administration, and the forging of powerful, multinational states. The stability he brought to England, even if temporary, allowed for a period of reconstruction and cultural flourishing that would not have been possible under continuous warfare. His reign served as a bridge between the Anglo-Saxon and the coming Norman eras, influencing the very concept of English kingship and its relationship with the continent. His quiet influence echoes in the very fabric of England's identity, in its legal traditions, and in its complex relationship with Scandinavia. The image of Canute, often popularly remembered for the tale of him commanding the tide to retreat, a story intended to show his humility, not his arrogance, is a testament to his enduring presence in historical memory. He was a conqueror who chose to build, a warrior who embraced diplomacy, and a Viking who became a true emperor. Number 3. Harold Fairhair, Harold Hairfager, the unifier who forged a kingdom. The story of Harold Fairhair, as told in the sagas, begins with a romantic, almost poetic, challenge. Young Harold, a petty king ruling over a small territory in southeastern Norway, sought the hand of Gyda, daughter of Eric, king of Hordaland. She, however, rejected him, stating she would not marry a king who ruled only a few small fylkir or districts. She declared she would not be his wife until he ruled all of Norway. Stung by her words, yet inspired by her audacity, Harold made a solemn vow he would not cut or comb his hair until he was the undisputed king of all Norway. For 10 long years, he let his hair grow wild, earning him the epithet Shockhead. Only after his victory and the fulfillment of his vow did he finally cut his hair, earning his lasting name, Fairhair. While this tale might be embellished, it beautifully captures the essence of Harold's singular, unwavering ambition. This personal commitment, rooted in a perceived slight, transformed into a national destiny, demonstrating how individual will can, sometimes, set in motion the grandest historical currents. Imagine the Norway of the 9th century, a rugged land, fragmented into numerous small, independent kingdoms, each ruled by its own chieftain, often locked in petty squabbles and localized conflicts. Trade was conducted, settlements flourished, but there was no central authority, no overarching unity. Harold's vision was revolutionary, to bring order and singular rule to this patchwork of territories. His initial campaigns were concentrated in the southwestern parts of Norway, gradually expanding his control through a mixture of military prowess, shrewd alliances, and the strategic subjugation of rival chieftains. He understood that permanent control required not just winning battles, but holding territory and integrating conquered lands into his burgeoning domain. His approach was systematic. Rather than simply raiding for plunder, he sought to absorb and administer, establishing local governors and tax collectors loyal to his emerging royal court. This slow, steady encroachment on existing power structures stirred both fear and admiration among his contemporaries. Harold's relentless expansion eventually led to a decisive confrontation that would echo through the sagas. The Battle of Hafrsfjord, traditionally dated to around 872 AD, while the exact scale and details remain debated by historians. This battle is depicted as the climactic struggle that finally consolidated Harold's power over western Norway. It was here, in the sheltered waters of Hafrsfjord, that Harold's forces faced a formidable coalition of chieftains from Rogaland, Hordaland and Sogn, who had banded together to resist his encroaching power. The battle was likely a brutal naval engagement, with longships clashing and warriors fighting hand-to-hand on deck. The sagas describe it as a great victory, and indeed, the outcome was a resounding triumph for Harold, a testament to his tactical skill and the discipline of his growing army. This battle was not just a military victory, it was a symbolic moment, signifying the end of fragmented rule and the dawn of a unified Norwegian kingdom. A pivotal point from which the idea of a singular Norwegian identity truly began to take root. The echoes of that conflict still resonate in the quiet depths of the fjord, a silent testament to the birth of a nation. Following Hafrsfjord, Harold's focus shifted from pure conquest to the delicate, yet crucial, task of consolidation and governance. He understood that simply defeating rivals was not enough. He needed to establish a sustainable system of rule. He instituted a system of land taxes and fines, asserting his royal authority over the free farmers and local chieftains. This new centralized taxation, replacing the previous local tributes, often led to resentment, as powerful jarls and landowners found their traditional autonomy curtailed. These were not minor grievances. They represented a fundamental shift in the social and political contract. Harold was not simply collecting tribute, he was demanding fealty and establishing a hierarchy with himself firmly at the apex. This tension, subtly but profoundly, influenced a major demographic shift in the Viking world, the emigration to Iceland and other North Atlantic islands. Many who resented Harold's new strong-arm rule, or who simply sought new opportunities beyond his reach, chose to leave. These were not desperate refugees, but often proud, independent landowners and chieftains who preferred self-governance in new lands to subservience under a king. They packed their longships, their families, their livestock, and their possessions, setting sail for the vast uncharted waters of the North Atlantic. This quiet exodus, directly sparked by Harald's unifying efforts, led to the establishment of the Icelandic Commonwealth, a unique and fiercely independent society that, ironically, would preserve much of the Old Norse culture and sagas that tell Harald's own story. It was a ripple effect, a grand migration of ambitious individuals seeking freedom from a centralizing power, carrying with them not only their possessions, but also their deeply ingrained traditions of law and self-governance that would flourish in their new, distant homes. This mass departure, while seemingly a drain on his immediate power base, ultimately served to remove potential internal threats, further solidifying his control over the remaining population. Harald Fairhair also established a rudimentary yet effective royal administration. He appointed trusted men, his herdmen and earls, to govern the various regions, ensuring his will was carried out and taxes were collected. These royal officials represented the king's direct authority in areas previously ruled by independent lords, a significant innovation in governance. While his court was itinerant, moving between royal estates, his presence and authority were increasingly felt throughout the land. He laid down laws and judgments, gradually replacing the patchwork of local customs with a more uniform legal framework. This was a slow, arduous process, demanding constant vigilance and a firm hand, but it was essential for the long-term viability of his newly forged kingdom. He began to introduce the concept of konungsgar, or royal estates, which served as administrative centers and sources of supplies for his court as it traveled. His rule wasn't without internal challenges. The very ambition that drove him also created enemies. The sagas mention various attempts to depose him, rebellions by disgruntled chieftains, and even a brief period where his own sons caused internal strife. Managing his numerous children, each with their own ambitions and claims, proved to be one of Harald's most complex challenges in his later years. He attempted to divide his kingdom among them as sub-kings, a strategy that ultimately proved unstable after his death. Yet, Harald, with his characteristic tenacity, navigated these challenges, always striving to reinforce the concept of a single, overarching royal authority. Harald Fairhair's quiet influence extended far beyond Norway's borders through his numerous descendants. His sons and grandsons, often restless and ambitious, would themselves become significant figures in the Viking world, leading expeditions, establishing dynasties in foreign lands, and even becoming kings in their own right. This extensive progeny further disseminated Norwegian influence throughout the British Isles and beyond, carrying the legacy of the first unified Norwegian king into new territories and new eras. For instance, his son, Eric Bloodaxe, though a brutal figure, would briefly rule as King of Northumbria, further cementing Viking presence in England, albeit in a more destructive fashion than Canute. This complex web of familial connections demonstrates the enduring, diffuse influence of Harald's initial act of unification. By the end of his long reign, Harald had transformed Norway from a collection of feuding chiefdoms into a fledgling kingdom. He set a precedent for future Norwegian monarchs, establishing the idea of a centralized state and a royal dynasty that would endure for centuries. His influence wasn't in grand empires like Canute's, but in the fundamental act of creation, taking disparate elements and binding them together into a unified whole. He demonstrated that true power could arise from the sheer willpower to see a singular vision come to fruition, one that would quietly shape the destiny of a nation for over 1,000 years. His legacy is etched into the very landscapes and the legal frameworks of Norway, a silent monument to his quiet, yet profound, determination. And as Harald's Norway began to solidify, its new king's authority pushed many to seek their own destinies elsewhere, beyond the reach of his consolidating power. It was this outward push, combined with an insatiable hunger for discovery, that led many bold seafarers to venture further and further west across the vast, open ocean. One such explorer, a formidable figure with a fiery temperament and an unyielding spirit, would embark on a fateful voyage that led to the discovery and settlement of a distant, icebound land, forever linking his name with the grand narrative of Norse expansion into the far North Atlantic. We now turn our attention to Eric the Red, the colonizer of Greenland. whose daring voyages expanded the known world for the Vikings. Number 4. Eric the Red Eirika. Raui, the fiery pioneer of Greenland as Harald Fairhair, quietly solidified his power in Norway, bringing unity to a fragmented land. His very success inadvertently set in motion new tides of human migration and exploration. For those who chafed under his burgeoning authority, or simply possessed an unquenchable thirst for new horizons, the vast, unexplored ocean beckoned. Among these intrepid pioneers, a figure of fiery temperament and unyielding spirit emerged, whose daring voyages would forever link his name with a distant, icebound land. We now turn our attention to Eric the Red, the colonizer of Greenland, whose life was a testament to resilience, a story woven from exile, discovery, and the establishment of a profound, if challenging, Norse foothold in the far North Atlantic. Eric Thorvaldsen, as he was originally known, was not a king or an emperor, but a chieftain whose restless nature and fiery temper would shape the destiny of an entire new Norse settlement. His story is one marked by recurrent cycles of conflict and expulsion. Born in Norway, his father, Thorvald Asfaldsson, was himself exiled for manslaughter, forcing the family to migrate west to Iceland. It was in Iceland that Eric truly came of age, but even there, his contentious spirit led to trouble. He earned his famous epithet, the Red, likely due to his hair and beard color, a striking visual that matched his passionate disposition. He was known to be a forceful individual, not one to shy away from confrontation, a trait that both caused him trouble and ultimately empowered him to undertake monumental tasks. The pivotal turning point in Eric's life came around 982 AD, after a series of feuds and disputes, culminating in yet another incident of manslaughter, specifically the killing of 2 men over disputed land, and then another man for failing to retrieve some timber for him. Eric was declared an outlaw from Iceland for 3 years by the Althing, the powerful Icelandic assembly. This was not merely a banishment, it meant he could be killed by anyone without legal repercussion. Faced with such a dire sentence, Eric, with characteristic defiance, chose not to submit or seek a smaller corner of the known world. Instead, he made a bold decision that would alter the map of Norse exploration forever. He decided to seek out lands to the west, lands rumored to exist beyond the known seas, first sighted by an earlier voyager named Gunnbjörn. These faint rumors, perhaps of distant mountain peaks glimpsed from westward drifting ships, were enough to ignite Eric's adventurous spirit and propel him into the profound unknown. Imagine Eric, a man in his late 20s or early 30s, with a small crew, setting sail into the vast, unforgiving North Atlantic. This was a journey into true uncertainty, relying on sparse accounts and sheer navigational skill. For 3 years, during his exile, Eric meticulously explored the coastline of this enormous new territory. He systematically charted its fjords, identified fertile valleys, and noted areas suitable for grazing livestock, even encountering the remains of earlier human habitation. Though the native inhabitants themselves were not present at that time, he spent his time not just surviving, but actively prospecting, understanding the potential for settlement in a way no one before him had. He wintered in sheltered fjords, likely living off the land, hunting seals and other game, proving the viability of sustained life in this remote wilderness. This long period of solitary exploration gave him an intimate knowledge of the land's resources and challenges, information that would prove invaluable for future colonization efforts. His determination paid off. He discovered vast areas of habitable land in the southwestern part of this new territory, and with a stroke of genius, or perhaps simply a deep understanding of human psychology, he chose a name for this land designed to entice settlers: Greenland. The sagas state he called it Greenland because people would be more tempted to go there if it had a good name. While much of Greenland is covered in ice, the coastal regions he explored in the southwest do indeed boast green pastures in summer, making the name both appealing and, in a localized sense, accurate. This quiet act of naming was itself an act of powerful influence, transforming an anonymous land into a desirable destination, creating a mental image of fertility and promise in the minds of prospective settlers back in Iceland. Upon the completion of his outlawry in 985 AD, Eric returned to Iceland, not as a broken man, but as a visionary leader with a compelling proposal. He spoke with persuasive eloquence of the rich pasturage, the abundant fish and game, and the vast, unclaimed lands waiting to be settled. His persuasive arguments, combined with the perennial pressures of land scarcity in Iceland, which was itself a relatively newly settled land experiencing population growth, and the desire for new opportunities, ignited a wave of excitement. He managed to gather a formidable fleet of 25 ships, carrying hundreds of settlers, men, women, children, and their livestock, all eager to seek a new life under Eric's leadership. This mass migration, orchestrated by a single individual, was a testament to his charismatic influence and the compelling nature of his vision, a testament to how his forceful personality could inspire collective action on a grand scale. The voyage itself was fraught with peril. Only 14 of the 25 ships successfully reached Greenland. The others were either lost at sea or forced to turn back, swallowed by the vastness of the Atlantic's unpredictable storms and immense distances. This highlights the immense risks involved and the sheer tenacity required to succeed in such an endeavor, emphasizing the thin line between success and tragic failure that defined much of Viking exploration. Yet, those who arrived established the Eastern Settlement and the Western Settlement, two distinct Norse communities in Greenland's southwestern fjords. Eric himself settled at Brattahlid, where he built a large estate and ruled as the primary chieftain of the new colony. This site, with its grand hall and church, became the heart of the Norse presence in Greenland, symbolizing Eric's paramount position. Eric's leadership in Greenland was characterized by a shrewd blend of traditional Norse chieftainship and the demands of pioneering life. He was not a king in the European sense, but a powerful Gogi chieftain priest and a landamama landtaker who held sway through his charisma, wealth, and experience. He established the social and legal framework for the new colony, organizing land claims, resolving disputes, and ensuring the community's survival in a harsh, isolated environment. The Greenland Norse, under his guidance, adapted their farming practices to the subarctic conditions, relied heavily on hunting, especially seals and caribou, and whaling, and developed a unique culture shaped by their distant location and close relationship with the sea, trading ivory and furs back to Europe. Eric the Red also had a crucial, albeit indirect, influence on further westward exploration. His son, Leif Erikson, inspired by his father's daring and perhaps by persistent rumors of lands even further west, would embark on the voyage that would lead him to North America. While Eric himself may not have reached Vinland, his colonization of Greenland served as the essential stepping stone, the vital base camp from which all subsequent Norse attempts at North American exploration were launched. Without Eric's pioneering spirit and the establishment of stable communities in Greenland, the Norse voyages to Vinland might never have occurred, making him a crucial, if perhaps unsung, enabler of even greater discoveries. The story of Eric the Red is not just one of conflict and exile, but of audacious vision and the indomitable human spirit in the face of the unknown. He was a man who, when faced with banishment, chose not to fade away but to expand the boundaries of the known world. His lasting legacy lies in the green valleys of Greenland, a quiet testament to a pioneer's courage and the enduring influence of a leader who turned adversity into an opportunity for monumental discovery and settlement. He charted new territories, established new homes, and left behind a legacy that would echo across icy fjords for half a millennium. And as the winds of the North Atlantic whisper tales of Eric the Red's daring voyages, our thoughts naturally drift to the next chapter of Norse exploration. For it was from the very settlements Eric established in Greenland that an even more ambitious journey would soon be launched, led by his own son. This next figure, driven by similar adventurous spirit and perhaps a desire to surpass his father's legendary deeds, would navigate even further west, to a land so bountiful and mysterious that its very existence would remain a quiet secret in European history for centuries. We now turn our gaze to Leif Erikson, the man destined to be the first European to set foot on the shores of North America, exploring the elusive Vinland. Number 5. Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson, the quiet pioneer of Vinland as Eric the Red, meticulously built a new Norse homeland in the vast, icy expanse of Greenland. His pioneering spirit ignited a new fire in the heart of his son. Our journey westward now takes us beyond the established settlements into the realm of truly uncharted waters, guided by the vision of Leif Erikson. He was not a king seeking a throne, nor a chieftain driven by conflict. but an explorer compelled by curiosity and the whispers of distant shores. His quiet voyage, undertaken long before the European world even conceived of such a land, would forever mark him as the first European to set foot on the mysterious continent of North America, a profound discovery whose significance lay dormant for centuries. Leif Erikson's destiny as an explorer was perhaps inherited. He was the son of Eric the Red, the very founder of the Greenland settlements, a man whose own life was a testament to pushing boundaries. Born in Iceland, Leif grew up, immersed in a world defined by the sea, by long voyages, and by the constant drive to find new lands and new opportunities. The sagas tell us he was a man of good judgment, strength, and remarkable physical prowess, but also of quiet wisdom, a blend of his father's daring spirit and a more measured, thoughtful approach. His reputation for fairness and foresight would serve him well in his monumental undertaking. The catalyst for Leif's momentous journey came from another Icelandic mariner named Bjarni. Years earlier, Bjarni had been blown off course while attempting to sail from Iceland to Greenland. He recounted seeing land to the west forest-clad shores, unlike the icy, rocky coast of Greenland. However, being more interested in reaching his destination in Greenland, he chose not to land and explore these new sightings. His account, though brief and unverified, became a quiet rumor among the Greenland Norse, a tantalizing whisper of vast, unknown territories lying just beyond their reach. It was this almost incidental encounter that provided the crucial spark for Leif. Imagine Leif Erikson, a young man of perhaps 30, hearing these tales in the hushed longhouse evenings of Bratteli, his father's estate. Unlike Bjarni, Leif possessed an insatiable curiosity and the means to act on it. Around the year 1000 AD, he purchased Bjarni's ship, gathered a crew of 35 men, and, with his father Eric originally intending to join, though ultimately prevented by an injury, set off from Greenland, determined to retrace Bjarni's reported course in reverse and thoroughly explore these mysterious western lands. This was not a voyage for conquest or plunder, but purely for discovery, a venture born of an explorer's pure desire to see what lay beyond the horizon. Leif and his crew first encountered a land of flat, barren rock and glaciers. They landed, finding nothing but cold stone and vast ice sheets. Leif, recognizing its inhospitable nature, named it Helioland, meaning flat stone land or slabland. Modern historians widely agree that this was likely Baffin Island, a testament to the accuracy of the Norse descriptions. Their stay was brief, a mere acknowledgement of this desolate landscape before they continued south, seeking warmer, more inviting shores. Continuing their southward journey, they next sighted a land covered in dense forests, stretching as far as the eye could see. This land, with its vast timber resources, was unlike anything they had seen in Greenland or Iceland, where wood was a precious commodity. Leif named it Markland, or Forest Land. This is generally identified as Labrador, the heavily wooded coastal region of modern-day Canada. They did not settle here either, but noted its resources, particularly its valuable timber, which would be a compelling reason for future expeditions from wood-scarce Greenland. The quiet contemplation of such endless forests must have filled them with a sense of wonder, a stark contrast to their familiar treeless homelands. But it was the third land they encountered that truly captivated Leif and his crew. After 2 more days of sailing, they came upon a place where they landed, finding not only forests but also wild grapes, abundant salmon in the rivers, and a mild climate. Leif called this bountiful land Vinland, meaning wineland or grape land. The exact location of Vinland has been a subject of much quiet debate among scholars, but archaeological evidence, particularly the discovery of a Norse settlement at Lonso Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada, strongly supports this as the site of Leif's or a subsequent Norse expedition's temporary settlement. This discovery, made only in the mid-20th century, quietly confirmed the astonishing truth of the sagas. The Vikings had indeed reached North America centuries before Columbus, in Vinland. Leif and his men built several large houses, which the sagas describe as large booths. Leifsbyrdir. They spent an entire winter there, enjoying the mild weather and the plentiful resources. The sagas speak of dew on the grass being sweeter than honey, and salmon so abundant they could be found in the rivers far up from the sea. This was a land of plenty, a stark contrast to the challenges of Greenland. Leif's careful observation of resources and climate shows his practical eye. assessing the land's potential not just for immediate sustenance, but for long-term settlement. This discovery, a vast continent brimming with untapped resources, was arguably the most significant geographical feat of the Viking Age. However, the Norse presence in Vinland was brief and ultimately unsuccessful. While Leif himself returned to Greenland after that first winter, subsequent attempts at colonization by his brother Thorvald, his sister Freydis, and others encountered increasing hostility from the native inhabitants, whom the Norse called Sklings. These were likely the ancestors of the Inubiathak, or other indigenous peoples of the region. The sagas describe initial trading encounters turning into violent clashes, with the Norse, despite their superior weaponry, being ultimately overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and determined resistance of the indigenous peoples. The distance from Greenland, the logistical challenges, and the constant threat posed by the Skrallings eventually made sustained settlement impossible. The dreams of Vinland as a new Norse homeland quietly faded, becoming a whispered legend rather than a thriving colony. Despite the short-lived nature of the Vinland settlements, Leif Erikson's influence is immense. He was the first European to definitively explore and attempt to settle North America, a monumental achievement that predates Columbus by nearly 500 years. His voyages expanded the known world for Europeans, even if the knowledge of these lands remained confined largely to the Norse sagas for centuries. It reshaped the Viking identity, adding the bold title of explorers of new continents to their reputation as warriors and traders. His journey represents the pinnacle of Norse navigational skill and their daring spirit of exploration, pushing the boundaries of their longships further than anyone before them. The quiet persistence of archaeological work at Lonso Meadows finally brought Leif Erikson's achievement from the realm of legend into documented historical fact, illuminating a forgotten chapter of transatlantic contact. His legacy is not in a lasting empire, but in a single audacious journey that proved the vastness of the world and the boundless capacity of the human spirit to venture into the unknown. He discovered a continent, a quiet whisper in the wind, that, centuries later, would become a roar. And as the gentle echo of Leif Erikson's incredible journey across the vast ocean settles into your thoughts, imagine the powerful ambition that drove these Norsemen, not just to explore, but to rule. From uncharted waters, we now turn our attention to the heart of Europe, where another Viking leader, through a combination of ruthless force and shrewd diplomacy, carved out a lasting territory and founded a dynasty that would profoundly shape the future of a major European nation. We speak of Rollo, the chieftain who established Normandy, laying the groundwork for a duchy that would one day conquer England itself. His story beckons, a testament to the enduring influence of Viking might and the surprising power of negotiation. Number 6. Rollo Ganga. Rolf, the founder of Normandy, an architect of a dynasty from the windswept, icy shores of Vinland, where Norse ambition touched a new continent. Our journey now steers towards a very different landscape, the fertile river valleys of Francia. Here, a Viking chieftain, through a unique blend of ruthless force and shrewd diplomacy, would not merely raid but would carve out a lasting territory and found a dynasty that would profoundly shape the future of a major European nation. We speak of Rollo, a figure whose influence resonated not through further exploration into the unknown, but through the remarkable act of integration and the unexpected forging of a new power in the heart of the Christian West. His story beckons, a testament to the enduring influence of Viking might and the surprising power of negotiation. Rollo, often known as Ganga Rolf in Norse sagas, emerged from the tumultuous late 9th century as a formidable figure. While his exact origins remain a subject of quiet debate among historians, some suggesting a Norwegian noble lineage, others a Danish background. What is undeniable is his immense stature and his reputation as a tenacious and exceptionally effective leader. Tales describe him as being so large that no horse could carry him, hence Ganga Rolf, meaning Rolf the Walker. This physicality, whether literal or legendary, speaks to a man of imposing presence and unyielding resolve, qualities that would serve him well in the complex political landscape of Francia. Before he was a duke, Rollo was a relentless and fearsome Viking chieftain, leading devastating raids along the coasts and up the rivers of the fractured Frankish kingdom. These were not mere hit-and-run plundering expeditions. Rollo's forces were persistent, often establishing temporary fortified camps and systematically ravaging the surrounding lands. Imagine the quiet dread that would spread through the monasteries and towns as word of his approach rippled through the countryside. His raids were particularly focused on the rich lands of the Seine River Valley, leading to repeated and increasingly audacious attacks on the strategically vital city of Paris itself. The Siege of Paris, in 885 to 886 AD, stands as a monumental testament to Rollo's relentless pressure and the desperate vulnerability of the Frankish kingdom. While Rollo was not the sole leader of this massive Viking force, he was certainly a prominent figure in the year-long blockade that tested the very resilience of the Frankish defenses. Hundreds of longships, carrying thousands of warriors, converged on the city, attempting to breach its walls. The Frankish king, Charles the Fat, proved largely ineffective, offering tribute rather than engaging in decisive battle. This long drawn-out siege, which Paris bravely resisted, showcased the sheer destructive capacity of organized Viking armies. But it also revealed a critical weakness in the Frankish crown's ability to protect its own people. The inability of the central Frankish authority to effectively counter the Viking threat created an environment ripe for a new kind of solution, one that Rollo, in his quiet brilliance, would seize upon. The persistent and devastating nature of these Viking incursions, and Rollo's particular tenacity in the Seine region, ultimately forced the Frankish King Charles the Simple to consider a radical new approach. Traditional military resistance was proving too costly, too ineffective, and too draining on the kingdom's dwindling resources. Charles sought a more pragmatic solution to protect his realm from the ceaseless Norse tide. This led to the pivotal moment in Rollo's life and a turning point in European history, the Treaty of St. Clair-Pet in 911 AD. Imagine the scene, not a battlefield, but a diplomatic summit, where a Frankish king, accustomed to grand ceremony, met with a powerful Viking chieftain. Under the terms of this extraordinary treaty, Rollo and his followers were granted a territory along the lower Seine, essentially the region that would become Normandy, or Land of the Northmen. In exchange, Rollo pledged fealty to the Frankish king, agreed to defend the region from other Viking raiders, and, crucially, promised to convert to Christianity. This was a revolutionary agreement, transforming a destructive foreign force into a settled, ostensibly loyal, defensive power. Rollo, the pagan raider, was baptized as Robert, accepting the Christian faith and entering the political and social fabric of Europe. This act of conversion, while perhaps initially a pragmatic choice for political legitimacy, set the stage for the deep Christianization of his descendants and their eventual rise to immense power within the European Christian world. The establishment of Normandy under Rollo was not merely a territorial grant, it was the foundation of a new, dynamic political entity. Rollo proved to be an exceptionally effective ruler. He was ruthless in consolidating his power, driving out any remaining independent Viking groups or local Frankish lords who resisted his authority. He encouraged his Norse followers to settle the land, to farm, and to build. But crucially, he also showed remarkable adaptability. He adopted the Frankish legal and administrative systems, embraced the French language, and encouraged intermarriage between his Norsemen and the local Frankish population. This rapid assimilation, combined with the retention of certain Norse martial and navigational skills, created a unique cultural synthesis. The Normans. Under Rollo and his immediate successors, Normandy rapidly transformed from a frontier territory into one of the most stable, well-governed, and militarily formidable duchies in Western Europe. The Dukes of Normandy built efficient administrations, developed strong feudal ties, and cultivated a powerful cavalry-based army. The quiet strength of their emerging institutions, built upon Rollo's foundational efforts, allowed Normandy to become a hub of learning, trade, and strategic influence. They built formidable castles, constructed impressive cathedrals, and fostered a distinct Norman identity that blended the Viking spirit of adventure with Frankish governance and Christian piety. The enduring and arguably most profound influence of Rollo lies in the dynasty he founded. Generations after the Treaty of St. Clair-Pet, his great-grandson, William, Duke of Normandy, looked across the English Channel and saw an opportunity. Drawing on the wealth, military might, and administrative experience honed over generations in Normandy, William launched the Norman conquest of England in 1066. This single event, which fundamentally reshaped the course of English history, society, and language, was a direct consequence of Rollo's initial act of settlement and the powerful, stable duchy he had meticulously built. Without Rollo's diplomatic genius and his vision for a settled Viking power, William the Conqueror would likely never have existed, or certainly not as the Duke of a strong, unified Normandy, capable of such an audacious undertaking beyond England. Rollo's descendants and the Normans they led would leave their mark across Europe. They conquered southern Italy and Sicily, establishing a vibrant Norman kingdom there that blended Latin, Greek, and Arab cultures. They played pivotal roles in the Crusades, establishing principalities in the Holy Land. The Norman cultural footprint, characterized by military prowess, administrative efficiency, and a distinctive architectural style, spread far and wide, a testament to the quiet, long-term influence ceded by one Viking chieftain's strategic choice to trade raiding for ruling. The story of Rollo is a powerful reminder that influence is not always about direct conquest or grand titles. Sometimes it is about the quiet wisdom to make a strategic concession, to embrace adaptation, and to lay the groundwork for a future that will far surpass your own immediate ambitions. He transformed a legacy of destruction into one of creation, turning a dangerous frontier into a cradle of European power. As his story settles in your thoughts, consider the quiet ripple effect of his pivotal decision, a single treaty on a riverbank that set in motion centuries of profound historical change. And as we reflect on Rollo's profound impact, transforming the wild Viking spirit into the disciplined structure of Norman power, our attention is drawn to another remarkable figure who, though not a builder of kingdoms in the same traditional sense, carved out her own sphere of influence through immense leadership, strategic foresight, and the nurturing of new communities in a distant land. This matriarch, through her quiet strength and incredible journey across the sea, would lay the foundations for some of Iceland's most prominent families and serve as a beacon of resilience in the challenging new world of Norse settlement. We now turn our gaze to Odd, the deep-minded, a woman whose extraordinary life story demonstrates a unique form of Viking power, built on wisdom and unwavering determination. Number 7. Odd, the deep-minded Odd Japogar, the matriarch of the New World, as Rollo, through cunning and strength, forged a new Norman power in the heart of Europe. Our gaze now shifts to a very different form of Viking influence, one not built on conquest and feudal contracts, but on quiet strength, unwavering faith, and the extraordinary leadership of a woman. We turn to Odd the Deep-Minded, a matriarch whose incredible journey across the vast North Atlantic would lay the foundations for some of Iceland's most prominent families and serve as a beacon of resilience in the challenging new world of Norse settlement. Her extraordinary life story demonstrates a unique form of Viking power, built on wisdom and unwavering determination. Odd Ketilsdóttir, known as Odd the Deep-Minded, was a woman of immense stature and foresight, a figure whose quiet strength belied the tumultuous age in which she lived. She was born into a prominent family in Norway, the daughter of Ketilf Atornos, a powerful chieftain who later carved out a substantial domain for himself in the Hebrides, the islands off the coast of Scotland. In the mid-9th century, Odd married Olaf the White, a Norwegian king of Dublin and commander of Norse forces in Ireland and Scotland. Their son Thorstein the Red would himself become a formidable warrior and chieftain, expanding Norse influence across northern Scotland. Odd's early life was thus steeped in the volatile, yet ambitious, world of the Norse expansion into the British Isles, a world where power was gained and lost with brutal swiftness. Imagine the intricate web of alliances, feuds, and fleeting victories that characterized this period. Odd, as a chieftain's daughter and a king's wife, would have been intimately familiar with the machinations of power, the necessity of leadership, and the relentless demands of survival in a society where status was constantly contested. However, this established life in the British Isles would not endure. The delicate balance of Norse power in Scotland began to unravel. Olaf the White died, and later, her son Thorstein the Red was betrayed and killed in battle. Suddenly, Odd found herself in a precarious position. Her powerful male kin gone, her family's extensive landholdings and influence in Scotland now vulnerable, and indeed, under threat. It was at this moment of profound loss and instability that Odd's truly deep-minded nature became apparent. She understood that remaining in Scotland meant either subservience to a new, hostile power or endless, perhaps unwinnable, conflict. She chose a different path. one that required immense courage, meticulous planning, and an unwavering spirit of independence. Rather than seeking refuge with distant relatives in Scandinavia or simply enduring her fate, Aud made the audacious decision to seek out a new home entirely. In the newly discovered lands across the North Atlantic Iceland, imagine the quiet determination with which Aud began to prepare for this monumental undertaking. She secretly commissioned the construction of a large Nr, a Viking merchant ship, designed for carrying cargo and people across vast ocean distances, robust enough to withstand the unforgiving Atlantic. This was no small task, requiring significant resources and discretion to avoid alerting those who might wish to seize her remaining wealth or prevent her departure. She gathered a substantial retinue, not just her immediate family, but also a large number of thralls, slaves, and freedmen, many of whom she had freed in the Scottish Islands, demonstrating a remarkable generosity and foresight. This act of freeing her slaves was particularly significant, as it secured their loyalty and ensured they would follow her voluntarily to the unknown, a testament to her unique leadership style, which blended traditional Norse authority with a profound sense of justice. The voyage itself was an epic undertaking, a quiet testament to her navigational prowess and leadership. The Landnobak Book of Settlements, which chronicles the settlement of Iceland, describes Aud's journey as she sailed west from Scotland, first stopping at the Faroe Islands, where she arranged marriages for some of her granddaughters. These strategic alliances, forged even amidst her desperate flight, reveal her long-term vision and her commitment to securing her family's future across generations. From the Faroes, she continued her journey to Iceland, navigating the vast and often treacherous expanse of the North Atlantic. This was a journey of weeks, perhaps months, relying on the stars, the sun, and an innate knowledge of the sea, guiding a large group of people and their livestock through immense uncertainty. Upon her arrival in Iceland, around 890 AD, Aud chose to settle in the western part of the island, in the Dýrlum area modern-day Denmark. Her claiming of land was not by force of arms, but by a quiet, ceremonial act. She rode her horse around the boundaries of her chosen territory, establishing her vast land claim according to the legal customs of the Landum land-taking period. This method, emphasizing peaceful occupation and legal declaration, further highlights her sophisticated approach to leadership. She then proceeded to distribute land to her followers and the freedmen who had accompanied her, establishing them as independent farmers and loyal neighbors. This act of benevolence and fair distribution secured their lasting loyalty and formed the basis of a stable, self-sufficient community, effectively laying the groundwork for a functioning society in a new land. Crucially, Aud, the Deep, was also a devout Christian in an era when most of Iceland was still staunchly pagan. The sagas explicitly state that she had been baptized and held steadfast to her faith. Upon her arrival in Iceland, she erected crosses on her land, particularly at a place called Cross Hills, where she would often pray. This was a quiet, yet incredibly significant, act of faith in a new land dominated by the old gods. While she did not aggressively proselytize, her unwavering devotion served as an example for her family and community, contributing to the gradual, peaceful Christianization of Iceland, which would formally occur more than a century later. Her decision to build a cross, a foreign symbol, openly on her land, speaks volumes about her inner strength and conviction. Aud's influence was not limited to her immediate lifetime. She became the matriarch of many of Iceland's most prominent families, including those who would play crucial roles in the establishment of the Icelandic Commonwealth and the composition of the very sagas that tell her story. Her wise counsel, her ability to lead and care for a large household, and her deep understanding of law and custom made her an invaluable figure in the nascent Icelandic society. Her quiet power was rooted in respect, integrity, and her profound ability to adapt and build anew from the ashes of her past. She carefully arranged advantageous marriages for her grandchildren, ensuring the longevity and continued prosperity of her lineage, and thus the communities she founded. Her death, as described in the sagas, is as remarkable as her life. Aud hosted a great wedding feast for her grandson, and after giving him her blessing, she retired to her bed. The next morning, she was found dead, having passed away peacefully in her sleep. A fitting end for a woman who navigated life's tempests with such grace and foresight. Her passing marked not an end, but the continuation of her legacy through the numerous families she had Established in Iceland.aud, the deep-minded stands as a unique testament to Viking influence, demonstrating that power was not solely wielded by warriors and kings. Her quiet strength, her strategic mind, and her compassionate leadership forged a new world, built on principles of order and community, rather than solely on conquest. She was a bridge between the old Norse world and the new, a pioneer whose legacy is etched into the very fabric of Icelandic society. A truly deep-minded woman whose influence continues to resonate in the quiet, independent spirit of that unique island nation. And as the story of Ord, the wise matriarch who led her people to new beginnings, gently fades into the quiet of the night, our thoughts are drawn to another figure whose influence was equally profound, though expressed through a dramatically different temperament. This next Viking was a formidable warrior and a renowned poet, a man whose passions ran as deep as the fjords and whose words could be as sharp as his axe. He wrestled with both earthly foes and the complexities of his own fiery spirit, leaving behind a legacy not just of battles, but of art and an unyielding will. We now turn our attention to Egil Skallagrimsson, the warrior poet, a man whose life was a tumultuous saga of both conflict and profound creativity. Egil Skallagrimsson, the warrior's verse, the poet's fury narrator, as the story of Ord, the deeper-minded, the wise matriarch who led her people to new beginnings, gently fades into the quiet of the night. Our thoughts are drawn to another figure, whose influence was equally profound, though expressed through a dramatically different temperament. This next Viking was a formidable warrior and a renowned poet, a man whose passions ran as deep as the fjords and whose words could be as sharp as his axe. He wrestled with both earthly foes and the complexities of his own fiery spirit, leaving behind a legacy not just of battles, but of art and an unrelenting will. We now turn our attention to Egil Skallagrimsson, the warrior poet, a man whose life was a tumultuous saga of both conflict and profound creativity. Egil's a central figure in one of the greatest Icelandic sagas. Egil's saga was a man of paradoxes. Born around 910 AD in Iceland, his lineage was itself steeped in the legends of powerful, often defiant, Norse figures. He was the grandson of Kveldulfr, also known as Wolf of Evening, a shapeshifter and berserker, and the son of Kveldulfsson, a formidable chieftain and skilled craftsman. This heritage gifted Egil with both a prodigious strength and a volatile temper, but also with an extraordinary gift for poetry, a rare combination that set him apart even in the rough-and-tumble Viking age. His early life, though described through the lens of saga, hints at a childhood marked by an intensity that would define his entire existence. From a very young age, Egil exhibited a violent streak, reportedly committing his first killing at the tender age of 7, an act that would foreshadow a life brimming with feuds and conflict. Yet, almost in the same breath, the sagas describe him composing his first verses, demonstrating an innate talent for intricate skaldic poetry, revealing the duality of his remarkable nature. Imagine the young Egil growing up in the stark, beautiful, the landscape of Iceland, a land defined by its isolation and its deeply ingrained sense of honor and law. In this society, a man's reputation, his family's standing, and his personal honor were paramount. Any slight, perceived or real, could ignite a long-lasting feud, a cycle of vengeance that could consume generations. Egil, with his fiery temper and fierce pride, found himself embroiled in many such conflicts. His life was a continuous saga of disputes over land, insults, and perceived injustices, often leading to violent confrontations. These were not just random acts of aggression. They were often within the codified, albeit brutal, system of vendetta that characterized early Icelandic society. Each conflict, each killing, further solidified his reputation as a dangerous opponent, a man not to be crossed, and contributed to the rich tapestry of his legendary life. One of the most significant and defining feuds of Egil's life was with King Eric Bloodaxe of Norway and his formidable queen Gunhild. This conflict began over property disputes and perceived slights, escalating into a bitter, deadly rivalry. Eric Bloodaxe and Gunhild, powerful and often ruthless rulers, sought to assert their authority over independent-minded chieftains like Egil's family. Egil, always fiercely independent, refused to bow to their will. His defiance led to a royal decree of outlawry against him in Norway, meaning he could be killed by anyone without consequence. This forced him into a life of wandering, often seeking refuge in other lands, and lending his formidable skills as a warrior to various kings and chieftains who would shelter him. This period of outlawry, fraught with danger and uncertainty, further sharpened his survival instincts and honed his poetic craft. It was during one of these perilous journeys, washed ashore in Northumbria, England, that Egil faced his most direct confrontation with Eric Bloodaxe, who had by then become king of Northumbria. Captured by his sworn enemy, Egil's life hung by a thread. In a desperate bid for survival, he composed a complex drop-hour praise poem known as Hoffelos, the Headransom, overnight. This poem, a masterpiece of skaldic verse, intricate in its meter and rich in its imagery, was presented to King Eric. The saga recounts that Eric, despite his intense hatred for Egil, was so impressed by the sheer artistry and brilliance of the poem that he was compelled to spare Egil's life. This moment is perhaps the most iconic illustration of Egil's unique influence, the power of words, of profound artistry, literally saving a man's head from the axe, demonstrating that even in a brutal age, intellectual and artistic prowess could hold sway over raw power. Beyond his conflicts, Egil was also deeply involved in legal battles, particularly concerning land and inheritance. The sagas meticulously detail his various claims and counterclaims, his appearances at the Althing, the Icelandic Legislative and Judicial Assembly, and his shrewd understanding of the intricate laws of the Icelandic Commonwealth. He used legal argumentation, as well as force, to secure his family's property and ensure his descendants' prosperity. This aspect of his life highlights the sophisticated legal framework that existed in early Icelandic society, and Egil's remarkable ability to navigate it, often outmaneuvering his opponents through sheer legal acumen as much as through physical might. He was a master of both the sword and the spoken word, adapting his methods to achieve his aims. Egil Skallagrimsson, his most profound and quiet influence lies in his skaldic poetry. Skaldic verse was a highly sophisticated and demanding art form, characterized by strict meter, complex syntax, kninga, metaphorical circumlocutions, and rich mythological allusions. Unlike the simpler narrative poetry of the Eddas, skaldic verse was often composed for specific occasions, praising patrons, commemorating battles, or lamenting loss. Egil was considered one of the greatest masters of this craft. His poems, many of which are preserved in Egil's saga and other collections, offer invaluable insights into the worldview, values, and language of the Viking Age. They are not merely historical records. They are profound works of art that capture the raw emotion, the intricate thought, and the deep cultural beliefs of a bygone era. His ability to express profound grief, as seen in his moving sonatoric Loss of Son's Lament, written after the death of two of his sons, demonstrates a depth of emotion rarely attributed to the stereotypical Viking. This poem, a poignant elegy, transcends the conventions of praise poetry, delving into the raw, personal anguish of a father's loss, showcasing his capacity for profound feeling alongside his capacity for violence. This poetic vulnerability, a counterpoint to his warrior persona, makes him a uniquely compelling and influential figure, revealing the multifaceted nature of the Viking spirit. In his later years, Egil retired to his farm in Iceland, aging and eventually becoming blind. The sagas tell of his final, rather eccentric acts, including his playful attempts to trick his thralls into burying his silver hoard in a secret location, even as he was infirm. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, a quiet end to a life lived with immense intensity. Egil Skallagrimsson's enduring legacy is immense. He stands as a towering figure in Icelandic sagas, a primary source for understanding the social, legal, and cultural norms of early Iceland. His poetry influenced generations of skalds and continues to be studied for its linguistic complexity and artistic merit. He embodies the ideal of the independent, defiant Icelander, a man who would yield to no king and would fight for his honor with both his axe and his words. His life teaches us that influence is not always about building empires or leading mass migrations, but can also reside in the raw power of individual will, the mastery of artistic expression, and the fierce defense of personal freedom. The quiet echoes of his verses still resonate in the scholarly halls and in the hearts of those who appreciate the profound, often turbulent, beauty of Norse literature, and as the complex saga of Egil, the formidable warrior whose legacy is etched in both the annals of conflict and the intricate beauty of verse, gently recedes into the quiet of the night. Our attention is drawn to another powerful figure, also shaped by the harsh realities of early Norse expansion. This next individual, a woman of extraordinary courage and a ruthless determination that sometimes bordered on the terrifying, would follow in her famous father's footsteps, venturing into the newly discovered lands of the West. Her story is one of audacious exploration, fierce leadership, and a willingness to confront the stark choices of a challenging frontier. We now turn our gaze to Freydis Eriksdottir, the intrepid daughter of Eric the Red, whose ventures into Vinland reveal a different, perhaps darker, facet of Viking ambition. Number 9. Alafor the Peacock, the wise chieftain of peace and prosperity, is the complex and sometimes unsettling saga of Freydis, a woman whose fierce spirit charted courses both physical and moral in the New World, gently recedes into the quiet of the night. Our attention is drawn to our final influential figure. This individual, a powerful Icelandic chieftain, chose a path less traveled in a world often defined by violence. He built his influence not through conquest or a desperate struggle for survival, but through wealth, diplomacy, and a profound respect for law and peace. His story is a testament to a different kind of Viking strength, one of quiet prosperity, sagacious leadership, and the nurturing of a stable society. We now turn our attention to Alafor, the Peacock, a man whose life exemplifies the quiet power of wisdom and peaceful influence in the Viking Age. Alafor Hökulsson, famously known as Alafor the Peacock, stands as a unique and luminous figure in the tapestry of Viking history, particularly within the sagas of Iceland. His epithet, the Peacock, might at first suggest vanity or ostentation, but in the context of his time, it reflected his remarkable personal splendor, his refined tastes, and the magnificent prosperity of his household. Prosperity not gained through raiding and pillaging, but through shrewd management, extensive trade, and a deep understanding of the land. His life offers a counter-narrative to the common image of the Viking warrior, showcasing a different kind of power, one built on wisdom, diplomacy, and the quiet accumulation of wealth that fostered stability and cultural flourishing. Olaf's distinguished lineage provided a strong foundation for his influence. He was the son of Höskuldr Karlsson, a powerful Icelandic chieftain, and Melkorka, an Irish princess who had been captured and brought to Iceland as a thrall. This unique heritage, blending Norse strength with Irish nobility and culture, undoubtedly contributed to Olafur's sophisticated character. Raised in the Icelandic Commonwealth, a society founded on principles of law and peaceful assembly, Olafur absorbed the values of a community that sought to resolve disputes through legal means rather than constant bloodshed. His upbringing at Laxdæla, a prosperous region in western Iceland, immersed him in the realities of a thriving agricultural and trading society, shaping his early understanding of how true, enduring wealth was generated and maintained. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Olafur's immense wealth was primarily derived not from raiding distant shores, but from land management, strategic farming, and extensive trade. He possessed vast tracts of fertile land, which he managed with meticulous care, ensuring abundant harvests and healthy livestock. His farms were models of efficiency and prosperity, providing a stable economic base. Beyond agriculture, Olafur was deeply involved in overseas trade. He maintained active connections with Norway, Britain, and possibly even further afield, exchanging Icelandic products like wool, fish, and falcons for valuable foreign goods such as timber, fine fabrics, and precious metals. His longships, rather than carrying warriors and plunder, were laden with merchandise, reflecting a shift in Viking enterprise from violent acquisition to peaceful commerce. This vast network of trade not only enriched him personally, but also contributed significantly to the overall prosperity of his region, quietly elevating his status through economic power rather than martial might. Olafur's reputation for diplomacy and peacemaking was legendary. In an era often defined by feuds and cycles of vengeance, he consistently sought to resolve conflicts through negotiation, legal arbitration, and wise counsel rather than resorting to violence. The Laxdæla saga, which focuses extensively on his life and descendants, highlights his sagacious interventions in disputes, often mediating between powerful chieftains and preventing bloodshed. He understood that long-term stability and prosperity for his community depended on maintaining peace and order. His words carried immense weight at the Althing, the central legislative and judicial assembly of Iceland. His arguments were based on reason, law, and a deep understanding of human nature, making him a highly respected figure whose judgment was often sought and heeded. This quiet ability to navigate complex social and legal landscapes made him an invaluable asset to the young Icelandic Commonwealth. His wealth also allowed him to be a lavish patron of the arts and a renowned host. Alafar maintained a magnificent household, famous for its hospitality and refined atmosphere. His feasts were grand affairs, attracting chieftains, poets, and travelers from across Iceland and beyond. He surrounded himself with skilled craftsmen, poets, skalds, and learned men, fostering a vibrant cultural environment. The sagas mentioned the beauty of his home, his fine clothing, and his general air of distinction, all contributing to his peacock epithet. This patronage not only enhanced his prestige but also quietly contributed to the flourishing of Icelandic oral traditions and skaldic poetry, preserving much of the cultural heritage of the Norse world. His home was a center of intellectual exchange, a beacon of refined living in a rugged land. While Iceland was still largely pagan during his early life, Alafar was born to a mother, Melkorka, who was secretly Christian, and his household became increasingly open to Christian influences. His own stance on faith was pragmatic and wise. He did not overtly reject the old gods, but he also did not resist the new Christian currents flowing into Iceland. His famous son Jartan would travel to Norway and be baptized by King Olaf Tryggvason, returning to Iceland as a devout Christian. Ilafor's quiet acceptance and accommodation of Christianity within his own family and community played a role in the peaceful conversion of Iceland around 1000 AD, demonstrating a foresight that avoided the violent religious conflict seen elsewhere. Life exemplifies the maturation of Icelandic society. The early settlers, like Ord the deep-minded, focused on survival and establishing a foothold. Alafar, a generation later, built upon that foundation to create a society that valued law, peace, wealth, and culture. His influence, though lacking the dramatic military conquests of a Canute or the fierce violence of an Ivar, was arguably more enduring for the development of a stable, self-governing nation. He demonstrated that true strength could lie in the ability to cultivate prosperity, maintain harmony, and lead by example of wisdom rather than brute force. He was a pillar of the Icelandic Commonwealth, his life a testament to a Viking ideal that extended beyond the longship and the battlefield. His legacy lives on through the numerous prominent families in Iceland who traced their lineage back to him and his descendants. The Laxdæla saga is, in many ways, the story of his family's rise and continued influence in Icelandic society, a testament to the quiet power of his wisdom and the stability he fostered. Alafar the Peacock represents the sophisticated, lessy side of the Viking Age, a world where chieftainship could be built on alliances, economic prowess, and a deep abiding respect for the intricate laws and customs that bound a society together. His peaceful prosperity, his measured approach to conflict, and his cultured household stand as a quiet, yet powerful, counterpoint to the often singular narrative of Viking brutality. As the final quiet echoes of Alafar, the Peacock's wise and prosperous life settle into your thoughts, we draw to a close our journey through the influences of these remarkable Vikings. We have seen figures of strategic brilliance, empire builders, daring explorers, steadfast unifiers, powerful matriarchs, and fierce warrior puppets, each, in their own unique way, carved their mark into the tapestry of history, shaping the world far beyond their immediate reach. Their stories, often wild and vibrant, yet also filled with moments of quiet reflection and profound decision, continued to resonate through the centuries. Number 10. Freydis Eriksdóttir, Ambition's Edge in the New World. As the intricate verses of Egil's Skallagrimsson, the warrior poet, gently fade from our thoughts, our attention now shifts to another powerful figure, also shaped by the harsh realities and boundless ambitions of the Norse age of expansion. This next individual, a woman of extraordinary courage and a ruthless determination that sometimes bordered on the terrifying, would follow in her famous father's footsteps, venturing into the newly discovered lands of the West. Her story is one of audacious exploration, fierce leadership, and a willingness to confront the stark choices of a challenging frontier. We now turn our gaze to Freda's Eriksdaughter, the intrepid daughter of Eric the Red, whose ventures into Vinland reveal a different, perhaps darker, facet of Viking ambition and the complexities of human nature in an unforgiving world. Freda's Eriksdaughter stands as one of the most compelling and controversial female figures in the sagas of the Norse age. Born in Iceland, she was the daughter of Eric the Red, the discoverer and colonizer of Greenland, and thus the half-sister of the famed explorer Leif Erikson. Growing up in the burgeoning Norse settlements of Greenland, she was steeped in an environment where resourcefulness, courage, and a strong will were not just admired, but essential for survival. Imagine her childhood, hearing tales of the wild, untamed lands to the west, sensing the vastness of the Atlantic, and witnessing firsthand the struggles and triumphs of pioneering life. This upbringing undoubtedly forged in her a spirit of independence and an ambition that rivaled, and perhaps even surpassed, that of her famous male relatives. Unlike many women of her time, whose influence was often exercised through domestic management or shrewd marital alliances, Freda sought direct involvement in the perilous expeditions that defined the age. Her name is prominently featured in the sagas recounting the attempts to explore and settle Vinland, the rich land discovered by her brother Leif in North America. These ventures were fraught with immense danger, from the unpredictable fury of the ocean to the unknown challenges of a new continent, including the formidable presence of its indigenous inhabitants. Her willingness to embark on such voyages, defying the conventions of her time, speaks volumes about her fearless nature and her relentless pursuit of opportunity and perhaps glory. The sagas offer two distinct, yet equally powerful, portraits of Freda's, revealing the complexities of historical memory and the nuances of human character. In the Grönlandinga saga, the saga of the Greenlanders, Freda is depicted as a figure of remarkable heroism and unflinching bravery. During one of the Vinland expeditions, while encamped, they were suddenly attacked by the Skrallings, the native inhabitants. The Norsemen, caught off guard, began to flee in panic. It is in this moment of chaos that Freda's courage truly shines. Despite being heavily pregnant, she seized a sword from a fallen comrade, exposed her breast, and brandished the weapon at the attacking natives. The sagas recount that this terrifying display of defiance, this lone, unyielding figure, standing against them, so unnerved the Skrallings that they retreated. This portrayal emphasizes her indomitable spirit, her protective instincts, and her ability to inspire fear and awe, even in the face of overwhelming danger. It paints her as a fierce guardian of her people, a shield maiden in the truest sense, earning her a quiet, yet powerful, place in the annals of Viking bravery. However, the Eirik saga, Roa, Eric the Red's saga, presents a far more controversial and chilling account of Freda's. In this version, she embarks on a joint expedition to Vinland with two Icelandic brothers, Helgi and Finnbogi. The sagas describe a descent into greed, jealousy, and ruthless betrayal. Freydis, consumed by avarice and a desire for all the wealth and glory of Vinland for herself, systematically undermined the brothers, spreading lies about them to her husband Thorvald. Her machinations culminated in a cold-blooded act of violence. She goaded her husband and his men into attacking the brothers' camp, leading to the brutal slaughter of Helgi and Finnbogi and their entire crew. When her men hesitated to kill the 5 women in the brothers' party, Freydis, in an act of chilling resolve, seized an axe herself and personally executed them all. This unflinching determination, while horrifying to modern sensibilities, underscores a darker side of Viking ambition, a willingness to eliminate all obstacles, no matter the cost, to secure one's own gain. These contrasting portrayals of Freydis in the sagas offer a fascinating glimpse into the fluid nature of historical accounts and the enduring impact of a truly complex personality. Was she a heroic defender, a ruthless schemer, or perhaps a combination of both? Her story reminds us that the quest for new lands, driven by ambition and the desire for wealth and power, often brought out the full spectrum of human nature. From the most valiant courage to the most chilling cruelty, her actions, whatever their exact historical truth, certainly contributed to the failure of lasting Norse settlement in Vinland. The internal strife and violence she instigated would have severely undermined any efforts to build a stable community in a challenging, hostile environment. ensuring that the Norse presence in North America remained brief and ultimately unsustainable. Freydis Eriksdottir's influence, therefore, is multifaceted. On one hand, she represents the daring spirit of Viking exploration, a woman who fearlessly ventured into uncharted territories alongside men, pushing the boundaries of the known world. She embodies the raw courage and resilience that characterized the Norse pioneers. On the other hand, her story in Eirik's saga Roa serves as a stark reminder of the darker currents within Viking society, the destructive power of greed, jealousy, and an unyielding will to dominate, even over one's own kin. Her tale cautions us that the pursuit of new lands was not always noble, but often deeply human, flawed by the same ambitions and vices that plagued societies back home. Her legacy, etched into the sagas, continues to inspire debate and contemplation. She stands as a powerful, undeniable female figure in an era often seen as male-dominated, demonstrating that Viking women could wield significant power and influence, even if through controversial means. Her story is a testament to the fact that leadership on the frontier demanded a relentless drive, whether for survival, glory, or self-interest. The quiet mystery of her true character, oscillating between heroism and brutality, continues to fascinate, a silent whisper from the distant shores of Vinland, and as the complex and sometimes unsettling saga of Freydis, a woman whose fierce spirit charted courses both physical and moral in the New World, gently recedes into the quiet of the night. Our thoughts are drawn to our final influential figure. This individual, a powerful Icelandic chieftain, chose a path less traveled in a world often defined by violence. He built his influence not through conquest or a desperate struggle for survival, but through wealth, diplomacy, and a profound respect for law and peace. His story is a testament to a different kind of Viking strength, one of quiet prosperity, sagacious leadership, and the nurturing of a stable society. We now turn our attention to Alafor the Peacock, a man whose life exemplifies the quiet power of wisdom and peaceful influence in the Viking Age. As the final quiet echoes of Alafor, the peacock's wise and prosperous life, settle into your thoughts, we draw to a close our journey through the influences of these remarkable Vikings. We've seen figures of strategic brilliance, daring explorers, steadfast unifiers, powerful matriarchs, and fierce warrior poets, each, in their own unique way, carved their mark into the tapestry of history, shaping the world far beyond their immediate reach. Their stories, often wild and vibrant, yet also filled with moments of quiet reflection and profound decision, continue to resonate through the centuries. Remember that history is not just about grand battles or famous figures. It is also filled with the strange, the unexplained, and the deeply human responses to mystery. It is a vast, quiet ocean of stories waiting for you to drift upon its currents. Let the echoes of these Viking lives, their ambitions, their journeys, and their enduring legacies be a lullaby. May their tales of quiet influence guide you into a peaceful slumber, reminding you that even in the deepest sleep, the past is always there, waiting to reveal its wonders. Thank you for joining us tonight on Sleep Through History. Rest well, and may your dreams be filled with curious knowledge. Good night.